All right, welcome to the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today we're going to sit down with Ted King and Bobby Woolard. This was a fun conversation. We had a really good time. You know, Ted is a current captain at the BPD, but also Bobby is a retired captain from BPD, and they got into this program. They're going to talk a lot about it, this Alpha Safety Solutions and what they do, a lot of different types of trainings, and they really give us some insights that I didn't know about and a lot of people don't know about. So I hope you enjoy it. I really did. And like I said, a lot of information you want to get in there. You know, but first, we really do have to get through and pay the bills. So when we take a look at the other side of this, firearms legal protection.
We've all seen it in the news. Someone defends themselves or their loved ones only to find themselves fighting a legal battle that can cost everything. Mortgage payments, retirement savings, even their kids' college funds, gone, just to prove they did nothing wrong. That's why Firearms Legal Protection, the official sponsor of Every Citizen Armed, exists. For as little as 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no surprise bills. If you have to defend yourself, FLP will handle the legal battle so you can focus on what matters: your family, your future, your freedom. We insure our homes, cars, and health. Why wouldn't we protect ourselves legally when it matters most? Go to firearmslegal.com, choose your plan, and use promo code ECA at checkout for exclusive pricing. No setup fee and a locked-in lifetime rate. Protect yourself today, and Firearms Legal Protection will have your back when it matters most.
Every Citizen Armed ensures that every American patriot is prepped with knowledge, perspective, and firepower.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Today I'm joined with a couple guys. I mean, you got Ted King, Bobby. I'm going to let you guys talk about who you are, what you've done.
My name is Bobby Woolard. I am a native son of Bakersfield. I attended the local schools, moved away for a while when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. Did a 4-year stint from 1989 to 1993. One deployment overseas for Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. When I decided to end my enlistment, I got hired on with the California Department of Corrections and went to the academy up at Galt, California. And 1 of 94 was my academy number. And I think my badge number was like 48241. And my first prison assignment was Chuckawalla Valley State Prison in Blythe, California. And kind of unique about it is that it's I know a lot of people don't hear about the city of Blythe, but it's if you're ever on Interstate 10 heading towards Phoenix, right at the Colorado River, that's the city of Blythe. And if you go due west out in the middle of the desert, then there'll be 2 prisons out there. Chuckawalla Valley State Prison. Shout out to Chucky's house for all my people out there. And next door was a brand new, and I mean a brand new prison called Ironwood State Prison. So Chuckawalla was a level 2 prison, the custody level of the inmates, and then Ironwood was a level 3. So I went to Chuckawalla and then did about a 2-year stint there, and then I transferred to Tehachapi State Prison for 2 years. And that's when I started reading the newspaper. I know it's kind of odd to say that, but I saw Bakersfield Police Department was hiring, so I put my name in the hat. Got picked up in 1997 and enjoyed a 26-plus year career at the Bakersfield Police Department. Left there as a operations captain. And since then, I've been dabbling in more on the private side of life. And me and my partner, Ted, we own a consulting business called Alpha Safety Solutions. And me personally, I'm a subcontractor for this phenomenal active shooter app called LifeSpot. Also, I'm a husband to my wife, Kelly, 3 kids, and I have 5 grandchildren. So very proud of them.
You know, it's funny, back in about, I wish it was probably about 92. Mm-hmm. My wife and I had been married for a couple of years, and I was getting out of the business I was in. And I was talking to their neighbor who was a lieutenant for the CDC, and he was talking to me about coming to work for the CDC. And he said, and really, if you want to promote fast, you come on board, you got to go to Blythe. He said, that's the best place to go if you want to promote, because nobody in their right mind wants to be there.
Yeah, that's one of the prisons. You like kind of the starting point. And I later on, after Ted does his intro, I can explain the why I went to Chuckawalla. I had 4 prisons: Centinela, Calipatria, Chuckawalla, and Ironwood, and what steered me towards Chuckawalla versus the other joints.
Perfect. Yeah, it was just ironic. That's the one he brought up to me. He goes, "Go there." So, all right. So that kind of says how you are now. Let's talk about you. What are you doing now?
So I still am in law enforcement. I am also from Bakersfield. I was born in Visalia, but we moved down here at my young age, and went to North High, graduated there, and kind of went to BC for a couple of years, and really wasn't making much progress in terms of getting life kick-started. So I ended up going to the Army, and I signed up for 4 years, and they kept me for an extra year when Iraqi freedom kicked off, and so I got to do about 5 years there. And when I got out, I went to the Bay Area where my ex-wife was finishing law school. And anyway, had no plans to come back to Bakersfield, but as Bakersfield does, it kind of pulled us back in, and she got a job here. And so my former mother-in-law, the day that we came back to Bakersfield, handed me the newspaper, and it said that the police department was hiring, and she suggested I go put in an application, and so I did, and went through the process, of getting hired with them in the academy and whatnot, and ended up getting on with them in 2005, and went to patrol and then gangs, and we got on the SWAT team with Bob fairly early on, and in 07 is when I got on, and then just kind of worked different assignments. SWAT for the police department is a collateral duty assignment, so had a primary assignment going through the different ranks, and like I said, gangs, and then promoted and went to homicide and was a homicide detective for a little bit, and then went out to the field again as a sergeant, and then went back to gangs as a supervisor, and then did our apprehension team for a little bit, so some plainclothes work and going and chasing down bad guys and stuff, and then went to homicide again as a supervisor, and then promoted and got to work for Bob. So he was the division commander when we stood up our special operations division, and I was his lieutenant that had all the special operations teams, so all the SWAT and bomb and K9 and all that. And that's where we were until for a couple of years, and then I promoted and went to patrol as a captain, and then we were peers for a bit, and then he sailed off into the sunset and left me.
I think 26 years. That's pretty. That's pretty good.
No, and he's a legend there.
So
everybody loves Bob. He won't say it, but everybody loves him. Always got the best storyteller. The best storyteller. Most of them are true, I think. Sometimes they
there's
change.
Some embellishing, no doubt.
Yeah,
about
sometimes
it.
they change a
It
little
makes
bit.
them better.
But no, just all around awesome person. So as we got that time together, when he was my boss, we ended up kind of going on the road and talking at a couple conferences about different laws and things like that. And so we decided to start our business and get into the consulting realm. And that turned into some firearms training as well when COVID happened, and nobody wanted to meet in person, but they definitely wanted to shoot in person. So we got into the firearms training and CCW work and stuff like that. So it's kind of morphed into where it is now.
Being that you're both in the military, you both deployed in the military, something that came up, and I've been in law enforcement for a long time, wasn't in my notes to ask, but I have a question on that. Something that you hear a lot about is PTSD. And I've always felt, and this is just my ignorance because I've never done either one of them, quite honestly, but law enforcement seems to get overlooked a lot of times on the PTSD issue, where really, I mean, it's tough on the military. I get it.
Right.
But law enforcement has to see that every day. What could be done there, or what is being done there to help with that?
I will tell you, I mean, just traditionally when I started working for the police department, a lot of our mentors were Vietnam veterans. Yeah, it's weird to think about that now, but helicopter pilots in Vietnam, grunts in Vietnam. We had an officer that worked with the police department that died on a motorcycle crash. I was actually a veteran of Miley, if you're not familiar with that. That was kind of an interesting fact that I found out recently from a former officer who divulged that to me. So, and that was the Miley massacre in Vietnam War, and that was the workforce that came in generationally that was training us newer officers that were rookies. And the stigma of the PTSD was always, just don't say it, because then they'll take you off duty. You're a coward. It's not recoverable. You retire without your gun. Those kind of things, and that's how they truly thought. And it wasn't. I'm not saying it was just the culture back then. So you just rubbed dirt in it and you just showed up and went back to work. Calling in sick was you didn't hear about that. We did not call in sick. On your evals, if you called in sick, they would notate that, like, you called in 2 days sick on this evaluation period. So at the time, the culture was, if you're sick, your family's sick, it doesn't matter. You drag your butt into work, because the way the police department works, there's not a minimal staffing. If there's an officer short because of vacation, because they're sick, injured, that they don't backfill. You run short. So you feel like you were letting down your beat partner, and that's where I think a lot of that stemmed from. But unfortunately, through the 26-year career and plus 4 with CDC, you saw a lot of officers tap out, and they went into their vices, alcoholism, infidelity, gambling, you name it. And I think that was part of the coping mechanism, because there really wasn't a wellness program designed at that time. They had stuff like your EAP, or they've referred you out to a third-party counselor, but there wasn't anything in-house. Now, within the last, where we made major strides is that we started a wellness program, and this isn't any brainchild of mine. It was more of the management teams at the time were passionate about it, hearing about the injuries that you suffer is what you see and what you do as a police officer, and the luggage that you carry with you through a career. And we can go into specifics or just generalities, but on any given shift, there's an officer that's seeing death, that's seeing homicides, that's seeing victims of crimes, and that stuff just doesn't go away. And as human behavior, I mean, it's going to weigh on you. And I think a lot of that, you got to have maintenance and discuss it and be open and honest that officers are going to get injured mentally if you spend more than a couple of years in this organization or in this profession. So the wellness program was developed, and it started really with some passionate officers that had a willingness to bring this information about what can we do about officers that are dealing with these mental crisis or mental issues or long-term exposure to these incidents. And you couple that with shift work, lack of sleep, Red Bulls and tobacco and alcohol and everything else. I mean, it has a recipe of being damaging. So beginning with like the Sergeant Pryor program, where it's a nonprofit that was started by Sergeant Pryor's wife, who essentially taps officers out, and you can voluntarily go off to a retreat and get special counseling from these clinicians. Since then, Trevor Martinez from the Bakersfield Fire Department, since retired, he brought in another organization.
Shielding the front line.
Yep, Shielding
Actually,
the
have an
Front
event
Line.
tonight.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So he brought it to our community, and he, as a firefighter, saw the same thing. And it wasn't just firefighter specific; it's first responder specific. Right. And then getting more involved, where we have officers that will before you would just shut up and go to work, and now they go, hey, I need to tap out. There's something wrong with me, and it's recoverable now. You come back to work if with the right treatment, the right assessment, you show improvement. And then we see officers traditionally in my era, I would say, you're never coming back from that. And then they'll come back full duty, and that's a stigma that I think we've overcame. And technology with our early intervention system at the police department, where it's basically checks the algorithm. So every call you go to, every report you write, every use of force you're involved in, any critical incident, it crunches those numbers, and it will set a threshold, and it'll say, like, Officer Bob went to a baby drowning call. He went to a homicide. He went to a fatal car crash within a 2-week period. Maybe it's time that, not that we have to put him off duty, but we have to do a soft contact with them and say, part of our wellness team will reach out and say, how are you feeling? What can we do? Do you need anything? And most of the times officers, hey, I'm good, but thanks for checking on me. We'll let you know. And these are trusted confidants within our department that you go to. And the chief is absolutely on board with, if it's at a level where you can handle it and it's not covering anything up, but if the officer is okay, he's okay. And if she's not okay or he's not okay, then there's other treatment programs that we can do to without the stigma that comes with it. Because I can tell you, as being a veteran, that any officer that has seen a fraction of what we see and needs to tap out and your cup's full, baby, take that time, and then come back and we'll come and we'll hug you up any time, day or night, because it's a rough gig. It can be really, really damaging to not only your personal life but your family life, and it just can blow up. And so EIS, the wellness program, us, the leadership team, and the department as a whole, I think we're more embracing of officers seeing bad things and understanding that you're going to lose them, and that's what we can't afford because of the staffing shortages and the recruitment issues that we have for even any man or woman that wants to be a police officer becomes more difficult with the noise that's going on internally and externally. You got to be really sensitive to these type of topics, and if you don't, you're going to lose your workforce. And who's left hanging on the end of the day? I mean, you want to make sure that the officers that are working are competent and that they're operating at a capacity where they're doing their job safely, they're supporting and serving their community safely, and having any of that, I guess, periphery damage going on upstairs. You don't need that if you're out on the street. It's a serious business, and you got to treat it as such.
And you said you came on in, 2006, 2007?
2005, yeah.
2005. Okay, so 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a lot different even now compared to 20 years ago. You were almost 30 years ago now, right?
Correct.
So what, I would assume you would take this as a big positive for your officers now.
Yeah, I think that we really made some strides when it comes to wellness by having some folks that are very influential people admit that they wanted some help, and some of that involves some time off, but building their way back, and SWAT guys that come back and say, hey, I took some time for me to go get my mental health taken care of, or whatever, and showing the rest of us that, hey, we can come back from this, and it's okay. We see some of the same symptomology in each of us, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe he did it, so maybe I should go talk to somebody, and it became less of a stigma. And I think that right now our program is fairly robust. We have a sergeant, Sergeant Coleman, he's awesome, and his focus is taking care of the people, but also he does a lot of proactive stuff. So bringing in groups ahead of time before anybody goes off on injury, and with education and whether it's financial wellness or spiritual wellness or training wellness, fitness, those types of things, all those things that contribute and can aggravate or mitigate some of the symptoms of the PTSD, or some of the symptoms of any of the stress that the officers are enduring.
Well, so you guys show up realistically on everybody's worst day. I mean, you hear that term a lot, but you do. I mean, you're going to show up on their worst day. So I love these programs that go out there and actually try and show the good side of everything. We used to do it at our grocery store and a feed store and things. We'd bring the groups down. The Sheriff's Department or BPD even came down a couple times, and it was just to get the kids with the officers and with the deputies and see them at a fun time instead of the rough time.
Yeah, community engagement is kind of it's an interesting topic, especially internally right now. And you get some traditionalists that would argue that that's not really our job; that our job is to go catch bad guys. But I would push back against that a little bit. I think that, to your point, going to a place where somebody wants you there is awesome. You know what I mean? It's really a lot of fun to go in and to deal with the kids and do a backpack drive or whatever it is. It's getting to see a different side of people, and they get to see a different side of the officers, and it all contributes to community health. So whether we're taking a bad guy from that community and keeping them safe that way, or we're positively contributing by interacting with folks and talking to little kids or whoever it is, community groups, neighborhood watch programs, it all goes to build a stronger community.
Were either of you ever involved in the DARE program?
As a student. As a student I was.
You never said graduate, though.
Yeah, that's right. I thought that was a pretty cool program, and I knew it probably cost a lot of money, but I thought it did that. We called them DARE fairs back then, and we would hold them at the store, and they'd come down and do fingerprinting and get a petting zoo and all that stuff. But I always thought that was a great thing. I don't know if it did any good in some ways, but in my mind, it helped with the community.
Yeah, that's interesting because we talked about that in many conversations about DARE, and you can't really quantify the wins. You just don't know. It's like, well, maybe it's working, maybe it's not, but it feels good and it looks good. But if you really want to see a model of, which I think nationwide, the Bakersfield Police Department PAL program, phenomenal, over off of East 4th in Texas. Is that where the building's at? Mm-hmm. And full-time sergeant, I believe now, is still staffing it, and it's an independent 501c3. They have a facility that I think it originated, multiple hands it's changed to with officers, but Chad Jackman is really the one that got a lot of the support from community partners and grants, and they built that into a local hub, and they do soft skills training, like girls will go in there to learn about simple things, hygiene and etiquette, and boys will go in there and learn, trades like boxing and tutoring, and it's a give back kind of a organization that it has been a long-term success and is still over there. And kids go there, and there's certain parameters. The kids have to be bought in, the parents have to be bought in. Where you got to keep a certain grade point average. You got to be willing to give back to the PAL Center. So I know over the years, several other entities have, wanting to start their own PAL program or saying why we're doing it right and why it's successful here has modeled theirs off of our side. So, yeah, transition from DARE. Now we're kind of more into the PAL or the SAL but that's we have had a lot of successes, and a lot of kids that are now police officers went through that exact program, and they just would be our best ambassadors and advocates for that.
Reading through your website, you talk about you've seen that you saw a change and you saw a need. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where you started the company that you're running now. What was the need, and what really brought you to do this?
Well, it's interesting. So a lot of times, police departments will go out and present a level of training, but with the government, it's difficult to say, hey, you as a private citizen with your business should do this, 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 and that, right? Because then you go and you do this, 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 and that, but something bad still happens, and you're like, hey, you guys said I'd be safe if this, right? And so the police departments have kind of backed away from that in an effort to not develop a special relationship, right? So the legal definition of that. With private business, we can go say whatever our credentials support, right? Mm. So we have 30 years of training, 20 years of training, and education that kind of backs all that up, and some experiences that have really exemplified what happens if you do things right, and a lot of times what happens if you do things wrong. Mm-hmm. And we found that that's translated very well when we've gone and talked to businesses about their safety and their security posture and vulnerabilities and things like that.
And you're doing this across the nation. You're not just doing it here in California.
Right.
Are you being more accepted in other states than California?
Here in Illinois are where we've done the most work. I wouldn't say that it's any more or less accepted. It's interesting though, like the guys at some of the warehouses and stuff, it's more the type of people, right? Like there are some of those places that those are hard targets because there are some just pipe hitting dudes that are in there, and it's like they get it. They're not. They say, hey, you tell us what to do, and they will take care of themselves, And I think that we're generally pretty accepted at those places. I don't think there's really been anywhere that we haven't been accepted, because we're not going in and telling people how to do a thing. We're saying like, hey, this is what we've seen works, and this is where you have opportunities for improvement, and this is where you guys can invest in some more training or how you can take care of it yourself. This is what you can expect from law enforcement when they get there. Because like we say in a lot of the training, a lot of times bad guy has an idea of what they're going to do. The good guys, the cops, have an idea of how they'll respond, but the people in the middle don't know what either side's going to do, and both sides have guns, right? So so we go in and try to explain, like, hey, here's some best practices, here's why we do what we do, and try to take out some of that confusion in an interest of mitigating any future problem.
Yeah, and I think it pulls the curtain back a little bit, because working with the private sector, they have their expectations of what they watch in the cop shows, what they think we do, and we can go in there and give them the realistic and relative information of maybe they didn't know, like response time or how many officers are working at any given time. What are the actual crimes that are occurring versus what's being sensationalized on the media. And we can kind of focus more on our side of it so they can build their safety plans around it. And I know in my career, there's always these life-changing events that happen, and I can the first one I can recall as a law enforcement was North Hollywood. So that that really was a driving force in getting the patrol rifle program going, because you knew the LAPD was outmanned. Historically, it wasn't anything new. I mean, in Norco back in the 70s, they had a similar incident. But again, it's what we know that we need versus political roadways that intersect and when that happens. But that was a driving force for us as a municipality to actually get patrol rifles.
I think if that hadn't been seen on television the way it was, it would not have progressed as fast as it did.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
We lived around Cucamonga at the time, and watching that, and you're just going, holy smoke.
Yeah.
You couldn't believe what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was a little bit of an eye-opener for hopefully a lot of the public.
Yeah.
And it had to be hard for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you just gut wrench. I mean, you're outgunned and you have to go break into a gun store and borrow guns off a shelf. I mean, there's something that it just didn't sit right. And at the time, I was on the SWAT. Was I on the SWAT team? Yeah, I think I was on the SWAT team at the time, and it just the resistance of just allowing a patrol rifle program, even though the conversations came up prior, it wasn't until that moment when it was almost green-lighted on within the next day, like we need these. The second one was probably Columbine, because that was how tactics has changed, sweeping, and what we learned on you can contain, but wait for SWAT isn't an option. And so now we have mobile field forces. We have your first officer there, get in there and draw fire kind of mentality, versus waiting for tactical units to get there. And that's to avoid Columbines and other incidents that have occurred. And even the Beltway sniper, I think that changed a lot of our tactics, being a mobile threat that's moving and thinking about those type of incidents. And then, of course, 9/11, that was another really significant event that it put us on our heels. And this is minus, I mean, now moving forward past 9/11, the riots that Ted and I had a really intimate relationship with how our readiness is as far as handling any kind of civil disturbance or civil unrest. And give you a quick example, when the Rodney King riots were occurring, the department sent a platoon of BPD officers down to LA to support their civil unrest. When the recent set of incidents occurred, there was no sending anybody because everybody had their own problems, and we didn't know when and where, because it was more of a mobile flare-ups. Anywhere in Bakersfield could have been a potential target for the Antifa crowd, and they were showing up all over town, and we had to be flexible enough. So our tactics change and the logistics change on how events just happen in our community and in the nation.
One of the most memorable times for me, when I was young, I think it was Rodney King, 92?
92. Yeah.
And I was actually opening up a new grocery store over there on Buck Owens Boulevard, Pierce Road back then, across the street from Highway Patrol Station at the time. And we were there, it was probably 11 o'clock at night, getting things ready for grand opening, and get this knock on the door in the middle of the night. It was just me and the owner there. And I look over, CHP officer standing at the door, and he's like, "Hey, can we use your parking lot? We're going to stage before we head down to the riots." Sure, of course, whatever you need. And it probably wasn't 15 minutes later, I look out, and I don't know, that's a big parking lot.
Yep. Right.
And it was completely full, hundreds of cars, it looked like, just lined up and ready to go. And then 15 minutes later, they were all gone.
Yeah.
And you're looking at that just going, wow. It was impressive to see, but at the same time kind of scary.
Right.
When you thought about here, I was a 20-year-old kid, 23, 24-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Wondering what the hell's going on.
Yep.
I bet you guys were on your end.
Yeah. And that's really those pivotal things that have changed, especially school-based violence attacks and workplace violence. That's where not our brainchild, because we're training on that in our normal position, but being a part of the school threat, what's it called, School Threat Assessment Task Force, originally developing a one best model for our schools here in the Kern County. So, and the numbers may not be right anymore, but at the time, I believe we had like 44 different school districts and 453 different school sites in the Kern County proper area. And some schools have money to do the recommendations to harden their target fencing, alarms, key card access, cameras. And there's some schools that just don't have that budget. They still have legitimate cattle wire around the perimeter of their school. So this task force, I think I can just say Catherine's name. Catherine Jones was
She's awesome.
yeah, she was a risk manager at Kern County Superintendent of Schools, and she recruited us. I don't know if it was recruited or drafted us. She's kind of a strong-spirited
conscripted, I
person.
think.
Oh yeah,
voluntold business that you get?
exactly.
Yeah.
She organized it, and she was a driving force, and it was just basically best practices, suggestions, understanding response time from law enforcement, and then vice versa, what they can do to protect themselves and to deter, number one, and then if there's an actual event, what to do. So that led down to the run, hide, fight model, and there's different models out there. And Ted and I and a couple other officers were part of that original think tank, I guess you could call it. Secondarily, Catherine was a director of the PARMA organization, the Public Agencies Risk Managers Association. So basically, all risk managers in the United States. She was like the president, the jefe. Mm-hmm. And they have these annual conferences. So we get a phone call from Catherine and says, hey, I have a problem. I'm down here in Anaheim in Disneyland. We were doing our conference. We have people coming from everywhere. My presenters on this topic, school active shooter, run, hide, fight, were unavailable, and they backed out. Would you and Ted be able to come down and present some material? And I was like, well, Kathy, I think we can. When do you want it? And she says, I need it by tomorrow. I need to come down. I was like, crap. So we asked the department, and then that's what, rolling down there, I think we did the PowerPoint on the road, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we get there, and Catherine said, yeah, you'll just have a small breakout group, 20 people. No, it was like an auditorium filled with like 500 people. And it was overwhelmingly, people came up to us afterwards, appreciated the information, thought it was insightful and something they could work on. And that was the genesis of the idea of why we are going to start our business, our consulting business, because we saw a need out there. And that's where it kind of kicked off from there.
As law enforcement, retired law enforcement, we're seeing a big change in, and now that you're trainers, you do CCW cleaning, are your officers seeing more people on the streets carrying firearms legally?
I don't know the answer to that. I would go out on a limb and say that most legal people who are legally possessing a firearm don't run into law enforcement very often. So, I mean, they're generally good people that are law-abiding citizens that are interested in, just going about their lives. And people that, again, not as a rule, but but I think more times than not, there are people that solve their own problems and don't necessarily have to call law enforcement for every little thing. Yeah. And I'm not at all saying that they need to use their gun to solve their problem. Nothing like that. I'm just saying, in general, they're solution-oriented folks. You know what I mean? So we don't deal with a lot of those folks.
And they don't put themselves in situations where they're going to have to use the firearm. What we've come across talking to a lot of folks is they find that, well, because I'm carrying a firearm, I knew not to go in that situation. I stayed away from that. But we all get pulled over.
Yeah.
How does your street cop want us to handle that when we get pulled over?
Through my years on the street, probably less than 5-6 times I actually ran across somebody had a lawful CCW, and the first thing they just said, hey, by the way, I got a CCW and I'm carrying my firearm, as you're trained and what you're taught when you become a responsible CCW holder. And it's really just a low, not even kinetic, I wouldn't use that, but just a low key contact. And hey, I appreciate you letting me know. Do you have your CCW license on you? Yeah, I got it. And driver's license. Where's the firearm? It's on my waistband. Okay, just keep it there. Just keep your hands where I can see you. So it's really has never been an issue for me as long as we're aware of it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I would say similar. Like we get pulled over like anybody else, and and so I've been pulled over a few times, and each time it just explained to them, I have a firearm on me. I want to get my license for you, but I have a firearm on me. I'm an off-duty police officer. Would you like me to get out, or would you like me to reach for my wallet, or how would you like me to handle that? Because the last thing we want is confusion as well. And I think that explaining just up front that what it is, you're going to go about your business. I'm going to get a ticket. We're going to leave friends. Is something where I certainly wouldn't want any confusion. Where I quickly reach for my wallet, or I have a bit of an attitude, and there's a handle of a weapon sticking out of my waistband. You know what I mean? Like, certainly wouldn't want that to come into the contact, factor into the contact.
Yeah, and I'll attest, as a patrol officer, when you make a car stop, that 30 feet to get to that car window, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in your mind, and a lot of the unknowns, and things that you're trying to key up on and using your training experience and your senses, and and it just isn't walking up and saying, "I'm going to write a ticket." I mean, you're thinking about your safety, you're thinking about your partner's safety, the driver's safety, and yeah, it's a lot to juggle. And then so getting more information. When I walk up to a car, windows are up, it's tinted. It makes me nervous because you don't know what's going on in the back seat, the front seat. If I'm being pulled over or if I'm pulling somebody over, I always liked it when the windows all went down at once. So right away I'm thinking, this person probably is going to let me know that he's an officer. Or he understands how sensitive this is. And then I walk up even closer to the car slowly, watching. Then I see hands on a steering wheel. I'm thinking, I feel a lot more comfortable, and I don't see any other threats because that's what you're trained to do, threats. And then as you slowly walk up, you say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, good." And then right away it's like, "Oh, I appreciate you put your hands on the steering wheel. Love that." And then you start asking for that information, divulging CCW. It makes it even that much better. Then you're not only are you at ease, but the officer's at ease, and then it becomes a more positive contact than negative. It isn't anything adversarial whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, I know when we started driving as kids, my dad always said, or not my dad, but somebody else, but take the key out, put it in, roll down all the windows. Back then you couldn't because you had
Hand crank that baby.
Yeah, but we rolled down all the windows now, and we turn the vehicle off with the hands up, and that way you put them on the steering wheel. And then,
both the driver and the cop want to go home safe.
Right. Yes, so. exactly. And that's got to be one of the most intimidating, or the most, like you said, you're really paying attention to that. Okay, so why do you tap the taillight?
So that's funny because I've heard different things as far as that you put your thumbprint on there. You know, that you want to make sure that the trunk is closed. That you want to make sure that a handprint or fingerprints there in case you get into something, you get injured, and now the cop's got to go prove that it was this car or whatever. I don't actually know the answer.
That's what before body-worn cameras, vehicle-borne mounted cameras. That was the idea behind it. I mean, you code off on a plate, you put your hand on it to leave your fingerprint. So if the cars ever stop later, they know that you were in contact with that car. That was the rationale behind it. It was explained to me. But then again, I was taught by Vietnam veterans. So it might have been checking for tripwires or something, or bungee sticks.
I always thought of it as just as a distraction.
Yeah.
Just to distract the driver. If it was something, they're gonna look a little bit. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because at night that was a tactic, but not really at the tail light, but the spotlight.
Yeah.
Because you look for that intermittent break in the light, and we would say if it was a higher, not saying a high risk stop, but if it was just your spidey senses are kind of kicking in, the intuitive side's like telling you be careful on this one. Then your spotlights are on the car at night. Then you'd run your hand over your spotlight, and it would give the illusion that you were crossing over in front of your car, and you would actually back around or wait, and you would use those. And there's all those little tactics that we would try to do to outmaneuver what potentially could be a life or death situation.
Now, are you both training CCW classes now?
Yes.
You both do that, and with the change in the laws in that, just making it a little longer. Is that positive? Is that a negative? How do you feel about that?
That's interesting. I think that there's probably some politics in there, to make it a little more strenuous, I guess, to obtain the certification. What I'll say is that I don't. More training is never really a bad thing. Now, is it necessary? I don't know. Some people could use more training than 16 hours. So, some people probably don't need that much. So I don't know. It's difficult when you're taking an untrained public, right, and then trusting them to carry a firearm and defend themselves and know all the laws that you're going to go over, right? So whether or not they understand the laws, the actions that they take are going to put them either in consistency or inconsistency with that law. So the little extra training is probably not a bad thing, but man, 16 hours is a long time.
It is, and it just seems like being in the state of California, you are inundated with legislation, and the third and fourth order of effect of that legislation isn't really thought through by our elected folks sometimes. So what I've seen, more information is good, but a lot of it is this information they need to know now because the legislation's written, and if you ever get in any type of criminal or civil litigation, you absolutely have to understand it, or if not, and if you're not crystal clear on it, then you can end up being on in the back of a patrol car because of something good intentions, but you got to be well aware. So, driving that in. And I've noticed some students are all about 16 hours. They love it. More information, good.
Sure.
And you have people that are more tactile. It's like, hey, just get me out in the range and we get some rounds down there. Make me safer on that aspect. So I think we get a combination of both. And good or bad, I mean, I'm not here to really hold court on that, but if that's the state that we live in and we have to abide by it, then let's get our people trained up and then make them safer and make their families safer. Be responsible CCW permit carriers.
I think too, just adding to that real quick, that's one of the reasons that we've been as successful as we have been with the CCWs and the audience, I should say, with the positive feedback, is that having conducted investigations and supervised investigations into people using lethal force to defend themselves, it is we're much more comfortable talking about the ins and outs of what happens if you decide to make that choice.
No, that's true. And then we could take a lot of that bleed over, especially justifying, not justifying, but to making sure that the customer understands that, what an imminent threat is, and not just to break it down into the meaning behind it and to give it a little more substance, because you add some realism to it and understand that there's certain thresholds and you have to articulate what that is. And being on the other side of being through depositions and through interviews on my latter life as a police officer, when officers are involved in these life or death incidents, you have to have a really clear path on that, because anything you say is being documented, and that's when the first officer shows up, that camera's rolling, like it or not, and that information is going to come out somewhere. So you have to be clear-minded, crystal clear in your eyes wide open and understanding what it looks like. And that's the advantage of being in the occupation for so long, because I can tell you, it'll take an officer X amount of time to get there. You better have your lawyer on speed dial. You better know once they show up, these are the right things to do, and what to say, but to be articulable enough that this is going to be memorialized, and they're going to be they'll have their day to scrutinize anything that you say, good or bad. So that's kind of the advantage of us, I think, as being trainers. We want that side to come out as well.
You're nicer than I am to our administration here. You say you're worried about that third or fourth reasoning. I look as they're putting as many obstacles as they can to make it harder and harder. And I'm all for more training. I think it gets into responsible gun ownership. If you can own a gun, you got to be responsible.
Right. Absolutely.
And you've got to get out and practice. You
Absolutely.
should be shooting. Yeah. I don't shoot enough. None of us do. I mean, more and more now we are. But the new taxes and everything that's been put on there, and it makes it harder.
Yeah.
Even buying ammo in the state of California is not easy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because, I mean, how we were trained, you shoot a lot, you become better, but you don't need to shoot that much to be proficient. I mean, dry practicing, the movements, the tactics, so you can incorporate a lot of that without rounds going down range. And it's that mindset that we bring to the table, too, of, we call it, I know jokingly, the Gunfighter Academy, but it's truly that. Most gunfights happen within a certain amount of distance, time, reaction, the terrain, the elements that are surrounding us. So it's all got to kind of come together at the right time. And spending your whole paycheck on a case of ammo is not going to get you there. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, we really strong proponents of doing dry fire. And do you know Naomi Moss?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, green.
Yeah, she did our range safety officer course.
Yeah. Oh, did she?
Yeah, she's
awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
She's really good. Runs a very good program.
I think she's awesome. I hold a grudge against her because she got my wife into competition shooting.
Oh, that sounds
she's a shooter.
expensive.
So thanks, appreciate that. Since it has been a lot more ammo and a lot more guns, it seems like.
Yeah.
Every time around, she's like, "Oh, I think I need this."
Yeah.
But we did come across it helps you shoot more accurately. But it's actually Brian Miller, mutual friend, who's using it, and it's like a laser. But I can't remember the name of it now. But my wife, of course, ordered one of those too.
Yeah.
So now that's there at the house. But it teaches you to shoot. Definitely be more accurate.
Yeah,
and
there's stuff.
Tells you what you're doing wrong.
Yeah. That laser felt recoil that they have kits that you can incorporate all that, and then it'll give you instant feedback, and it improves your game. And it's not a game; it's a life or death in these type of situations. So we see the serious shooters. I mean, they buy the best ammo, they keep their guns clean, they have the best kit, they train. They read up on different articles. They understand not only that their freedom's at stake if they do something wrong, but their liberty interest is at stake, meaning your employment, your house, and your bank accounts will get drained dry. So I think it just isn't one thing. I think you have to keep layering on, and technology's helped out a lot on that as well.
You'll actually hear in our commercial, one of the commercials that comes on during this is for firearms legal protection. It's about having that legal counsel, and they are good supporters of ours, and we strongly recommend having prepaid legal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the laws change so much that the officers have to get constant legal updates. So it's stuff that unless you're going out and looking for it, it's a good idea to pay somebody to pay somebody who does.
And then they're up on the force. Sorry to jump in, but the force science side of it, and that's a really crazy factor of sometimes you need to be quiet, not because you're guilty, is because you need time to reflect on the actual just the way the physiological effects of being a part of a deadly encounter. And then you may need a day or two of not relaxation, but at least to reflect on what exactly happened. And when you have somebody that's a professional that's trained and kind of not put words in your mouth, but help you articulate why this happened, and do you think this could have been a factor, and this might be something that we can explain a little bit better. And I think attorneys, that's what they're geared to do. So the force science side, bringing an LDF on board with those type of things have been very helpful.
I think that the first time I went through my CCW training, the class, he's with the sheriff's department, and he told me, he told the whole class, he said, "Listen, I'm going to be the one that comes investigate you.
Right.
Here's what you're going to say." He was very clear, and it's not a whole lot.
Right.
And he just said, you don't know what you're going to say at that moment. You're wound up. You don't know what's happening, so don't say anything. Just say what you absolutely have to.
Yeah, that's it. Once you're done, you get isolated. Okay, first, you're not a criminal, but you feel like one because you're not free to go, even though you did a lawful thing, but you're not free to go because we're conducting a homicide investigation, a murder, and whether it's justified or not, that's up to people like Ted or. I'm sorry, it used to be what I used to do. Folks like us will get you in a room just like this, and then you need to explain yourself. Now, if you're on your own, good luck. But if you have an attorney that'll sit next to you and say, "Hold on a second, let me talk to my client. Let's step out for a while. Oh, we need to take a break." What that does, it gives you time to say, because again, this is all being memorialized. There's nothing that's going to be, "Hey, can we start that? I didn't answer that right. Can I start that portion over?" No. It's going to be in that document, and that's just the nature of what it is. And at least if you have proper representation, lawyer that is skilled on those type of line of questionings, and they can prepare a customer on not what to say, but just say, "Hey, let's talk about what you're going to. The question is going to come out. They'll tell you what the question is going to be. Please let me know what your answer is." Okay, is that all, or could it be? Was the lighting this different, or could it have been the angle, or was it? Are you clear it was a gun? How would you know it was a gun? Well, and be more definitive on your answer, because that is exactly what will keep you out of prison and keep you from losing your livelihood.
Yeah, you're going to get sued civilly. I mean, it's going to happen pretty much. So you better be ready in that one. Yeah. With that being, you're still on the force.
Yes, sir.
And when you look at this, how are you guys dealing with the homeless issues out there? This came up the other day, and I
thought we called them unhoused.
Yeah, that might be a whole other issue or a whole other episode. So I can tell you though that we've created an entire unit to help deal with it. And it's because, as we all know, sometimes there's some criminal activity, sometimes there's mental health issues, sometimes there's people that are down on their luck. It's not a one size fits all solution. And so having the services in our community here in Bakersfield is great as far as providing services and all the nonprofits that are out there and all the opportunities that everybody has. But a lot of times, if people don't know about those services or they don't have a means to get to those services, then they go either unused or the people that need them don't get them. So we put together a unit that is called our Impact Team, and it's a great group of handpicked people that are familiar with the services that are out there. They go out and they actually develop relationships with a lot of the folks that are staying out on the street. And what they do is they go out and they try to help kind of mitigate the problem a little bit here and there, but and get those people to the services they need. The problem is that some people don't want services.
No, they don't want the help.
Some people are more interested in doing what they want to do, and it doesn't make sense to a lot of us, where it's like, well, why don't we just this? Why don't we just that? And it's like, well, you got to get people that want the help, And so anyway, it is a very deep subject, and it's a lot of there's politics involved, there's mental health involved, there's a lot of that stuff where we talk about our officers, the right ones to go deal with that, with mental health and whatnot.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but currently, I don't think that we've developed a mechanism or a group that is better suited. And I'm not saying that the police are the ones that should be doing it,
right.
But when it comes to danger and people that are willing to go out there and do it, you got limited options. So.
We let our listeners ask questions, and that was one I was going to ask earlier, and so it came back to mind. So I had to get you while I had.
Yeah, hopefully that wasn't too slippery of an answer, but that's there's
it's a slippery
lot
slope. I don't know how you can answer that.
Yeah, I could kind of before I was a part. Impact was actually assigned to special operations. That's where when they developed this stand-up team. Part of it was with the load-bearing shelter that's off on East Brundage. That was one component, and basically the mental health component and the law enforcement component. But essentially, when the shelter was built, there was it's a one-stop kind of a shop where you get all your services that you need. You get your health care, you get your driver's license, you get your social security number, you get soft skills training, you get housing, you get put on the priority list to get put into some long-term housing, and that's what it was developed to do. It has an animal shelter on place. If your car's broke down, they can help you fix it and drive it over there. So a lot of resources was built on that idea. The other component was those soft contacts, I think they call them, point-of-time missions, where you had mostly flood ministries, people involved with the Open Door Network now. Sure. Before it was called, I don't know what we called it before then, but things changed name. But these nonprofits, they didn't want law enforcement to be, if we were dressed down. We couldn't wear a uniform. But the information that we received, it takes at least 20 contacts out there in the river bottoms on the street corners with a homeless person and saying, do you want these services? And out of 20 times, you may get the 20th times they say, yes, we want to go now. And then you get them in the shelter. Well, once they get them to the system of the shelter, it usually takes at least 3 times from going homeless to the shelter before they actually say, well, maybe it's time that I get substance abuse treatment and everything else. So whatever the answer is, I mean, that's coupled with the jail space that if you had a public nuisance or a area of blight, you couldn't. Well, I'm not saying you couldn't arrest, but there wasn't booking certain individuals based on the threshold of their crimes to take them into the jail. There wasn't jail space because the jail was at, and I'm sure the sheriff was telling you this, the jail's at capacity because the state's not taking felons, and it just put a grinding halt in the criminal justice system, and you couldn't, get trial dates or cases were being kicked out. Sure. So, and then the other order of impact on that is arsons have become a predominant issue in the downtown area because of homeless issues. So now the arson team has doubled in size, and now their problem. So the homeless issue is not just a police problem or a mental health problem or social services or nonprofits. Now it becomes a fire problem, and it's one of those. It's not a phenomenon. It's the decay of a city based on lack of having a good plan of action on how to sort out these issues that we have with homelessness.
I think that explains as best you can, realistically. Yeah. So that's now with Alpha, when you go into a company, just company X, what is the ideal situation for you guys walking into? What are you looking for, or what are they calling and asking you to do? I always think of California, a very litigious state. It would be a great opportunity for some of those companies to come to you and help, take some of their liability away.
Yeah. Senate Bill 553, and that's what. Okay. Senate Bill 553 went into law. That's another. I didn't mention that part, but we knew that legislation made it out of appropriations. It was going to be enacted where any workplace with 10 or more employees are going to have some workplace violence or an active shooter style training. It's an OSHA thing, and your business will be fined. I think it's $10,000 if you don't do this annual training. We knew about that when we went to the Parma conference. I maybe even heard about it at the Parma conference.
Is it in place now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that.
A lot of people, that reaction, 100%. I talked to my OSHA friend, Dustin, and he says that's one of the biggest citations they're getting businesses for right now. And anyway, side note to that is that legislation came through, and now most of our business has been derived based on that. And then you ask, what do they look for? I mean, sometimes they don't even know what they're asking for. They're actually shocked by the information that we provide them because I think we live in this insulated world, like it can't happen here. But then again, you watch the news, it happens somewhere almost every day, and not only at the workplace but outside the workplace. So I think what we provide is not only skills for the to protect the establishment or the business, but the employees to provide them with some tools in these in the moments of truth when these things do happen, unfortunately, but also to provide that information to the most vulnerable, like their kids.
Imagine this. You defend yourself or a loved one, and instead of being seen as the good guy, you're arrested, charged, and forced to fight for your freedom. You know you did nothing wrong, but now you're looking at thousands in legal fees. We've seen it happen. Good people losing everything just to prove they acted lawfully. That's why you need firearms legal protection. For just 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no payback, just real protection with experienced self-defense attorneys who have your back. Plus, you'll get 24/7 attorney access, red flag protection, and more. Go to firearmslegal.com, pick your plan, and use promo code ECA for exclusive pricing, no setup fee, and a lifetime rate lock. Because when the worst day of your life happens, you shouldn't face it alone.
I work a lot of small businesses, but all of them have more than 10 employees. And I would bet very few of them know about that.
A lot of them don't,
if any. And so you'll go in and you do this training. What does that look like?
Yeah, there's a couple different options. For us, we do it in person. There are some online options and things like that. It really kind of, I don't know, there's the whole full spectrum of who you're going to get depending on where you go. Obviously, I can vouch for us in our experience and the fact that we've been to workplace violence incidents that have turned into crimes and bringing that level of education to the folks that we're teaching has really helped out. So we can. What generally happens is they hire us on to go do a workplace violence training, which looks like a presentation. A lot of times we'll do a walkthrough, like a facility walkthrough with the employees and look at their workspaces and say, hey, this is some options for consideration for your own safety. Like what would you use if for an improvised weapon, and then also like I said, the education component. If somebody threatened you, what are you going to do to report that? How does your business collect that information and investigate that and log that information? It's similar to like a sexual harassment or equal opportunity investigation. You got to have the training every year now, and like I said, it's one of those things where we push active shooter into the training as well, so that there's kind of like this escalation, right, where we want it to be taken care of at the lowest level possible. But if it goes higher, here's what you can expect from law enforcement, from bad guys, and all that.
And how long does this training last? Will you go in and do a training for a company? As a general rule,
it's interesting. We tailor it, so it's in general. It's a couple hours, depending on if they want to do tabletop exercises or how in depth the walkthrough is, or if they want to tie that into a security assessment or a vulnerabilities assessment, physical security or procedural security or whatever. So it really, it's kind of modular. I think that the most streamlined version for us is roughly an hour.
Yeah. And especially we have a large workforce, and if the line's down for an hour, it's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss. So they want to keep that moving. So that's why we try to stay flexible on that regard. But it's a know thy enemy. I think that. What really is eye-opening to the business side is downtime production. That's one thing. I don't like to say the bottom line is this, but also what we provide is a deterrent side of it, because there's a what we call left to bang. That is a common phrase. Is that before the event actually occurs, let's empower our employees. Let's get in front of it. Let's be able to identify it. And what do you do when you know about it? Like know thy enemy. So it gives like a pathway for the employer to know that. and the employee to know that this isn't like, let's just ignore this, it'll go away, or it's none of my business. We can kind of talk people through the steps. There are people in charge that need to know about this. If they don't know about this and it happens, then it's kind of incumbent upon us, and it's our something that was just going to go away. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, it's some of the when you start talking about the 4 types of workplace violence defined by DOJ and everybody else, and 553, is that it puts these events in a silo and where it originates. And a lot of people are pretty, not amused, but they're very intrigued by the fact that outside of work is brought into work very easily. When you have infidelity, you have child support, you have divorces, you have name it, and those stressors that people forget about, and then it just opens their eyes. They're like, when can we get you to come back next year? So we get a pretty good response, especially when we bring in local, we sanitize it, but we'll bring in local events, and we'll describe them and debrief them, and we'll ask management, how could we have prevented this? And we'll ask the employees the same question. And it's interesting, some of the feedback that we get on that.
Yeah. Like any training, the investment that you put on the front end limits the zeros on the back end.
Correct.
So.
I work with a lot of farm stores, and I can say, and I have one in particular right off the top of my head, I'm thinking that could definitely, we need to connect you guys.
I'm available.
Absolutely.
You're available?
Yeah.
The retirement thing is working out?
It is, yes.
Yeah, and I think they've got 100 and something employees, and I don't know that they know about it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people do.
It's
Until OSHA shows up and goes, hey, have you done your workplace violence active shooter training? They're like, a what?
and we have a $12 billion deficit, so I think OSHA's going to be out looking for some revenue.
Could be, yeah.
I could definitely. Well, I always think back to Prop 65. And that all that stuff. God. The origin of that one was a nightmare in itself. So in that, so you go and you're talking to a lot of these folks. You're talking to a lot of different companies, but you're doing big and small.
Right.
Anywhere. So basically 11 employees up to however
we've
many.
done businesses with thousands of employees. We've done businesses that are, relatively small, banks and things like that as well.
At least 10 people.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Is your, without to get into the fees necessarily, but is it based off of the amount of employees? Is it, there's got to be some type of flat rate.
It's kind of tough. It's based off the amount of work. We generally have a minimum, and then depending on what's necessary for that particular business and the scope of the work and how long it's going to take, if we need to, if the two of us can do it, or if we have to translate material and provide translated material, there's costs with all of it because obviously we got to pay for that as well.
Well, you got to keep the lights on no
That's
matter
right.
what. So that's this one out. They have 5 locations that I'm thinking about, so you'd have to hit all 5 locations probably. So there's definitely some. Might get to stay at the beach, but that's okay. That probably hurt your feelings at all.
And it's funny because we have a purpose. It's not just just check the box for us. I mean, we go in there because we know reducing the victim population and making them survivors. That's a good win. And when you see them at the end of the day, we always say, this isn't just for you. You go home and tell your 6th grader, your 5th grader, your mom, dad, brother, sister, this is what they need to know. And that's I think our goal. That's our new purpose on moving that forward and that message. Because the law can say you have to do it, but until we can convince that employee, like, wow, this is good, and they'll clap at the end of our presentation, like, this is good stuff, and then I'm going to go talk to whoever, and that's the win. Now, that's the DARE program. You can't quantify,
right, there you
but
go.
At least we know that the information's out, and if it's simple as run, hide, fight, then we won't have another Columbine or a Newton or a Uvalde. So that's our goal.
I'm sure it radiates out.
Yeah,
I think back to a gal that I used to work with, and she was very anti-gun, and she was actually my boss at the time, and she hated guns. And fine, they talk, don't think about it. Well, of course, I always have one with me. And one day we were in a very bad neighborhood, and we were going to dinner, and it was very late in a really bad part of Fresno. And as we're getting out of the truck, she looks at me and says, "You got your gun with you, right?"
Right.
And I thought, geez. So then we sat down at lunch the next day, and we talked about what it really takes. You're a single woman out there traveling by yourself. Fine, you don't want to carry a firearm, but you're in a situation. You're sitting at lunch, somebody walks in. What is your next step?
Right.
What should you do? You have a fork in your hand. You've got that ketchup bottle sitting there. You think about these things a little bit.
That's really where the training goes, is do something. Like we do talk about the run, hide, fight model because it's probably the most simple to remember. There are other ones out there, and we've got certifications and a lot of those different acronyms as well. But it's super simple, right? And it's do something. If you don't have to be there, don't be there.
Right.
You know, if you can't, if you have to be there, be somewhere where they can't get to you. You know, and if that's not an option and they're already there, or the incident starts and it's right next to you, then do something to save yourself, because it's going to take the cops a little bit of time to get there, you know, or security or whatever else. So.
Yeah, Donnie Youngblood was pretty clear about that. He said, you got to understand, by the time we get there, it's over.
Right.
Everything's over. It's going to take us, best case scenario, 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound morose on that, but that's what that idea is. Like, you're hoping the cops or the deputies get there, but hope's not a course of action. You got to do something.
Yeah.
And we kind of, you know, in our training platform, I know we kind of give it a little more mustard by, we'll say things like, you know, you got to be the lion and lead the lambs, because we'll debrief incidents. In 1984, they had the shooting down at McDonald's in San Ysidro, and there just wasn't any lions, and there was opportunities that somebody could have intervened or attacked. And nobody signs up to be heroes on these type of events, but believe me, in the crowd, if somebody could have done something, and there's a lot of failures in that, and the world's different now, but not, because these events still occur. So that's kind of the realism, the understanding of response models, and most people say, what happens when you're involved in this? Well, I just hit 911, and then what happens? Well, I just hope it goes away, or I hope the officers get there quick. Well, I can tell you that the Bakersfield Police Department, you know, we have, you know, 5 different shifts. You might be lucky if you have 25 to 26 to 30 officers based on time and calls for service, and who's working what part of town right now. And this side of town that we're in, we're probably only looking at 1 or 2 officers that are working currently at this time. That's not a bad thing. That's just based on the information, calls for service, and the current population. But how long is that officer going to get when you hit 911? Well, I think Chief Terry mentioned that right now, Part 1 crime, we'll have an officer there in 5 minutes, or a little over 5 minutes.
And Part 1 crime means?
Crime against a person, violence, somebody's going to get harmed, a vehicle crash. There's a life that needs, they call it, needs immediate attention by law enforcement. It can't be set aside. Right. So really the question is what are we doing in those 5 minutes for self-preservation? And there's different options. The options-based response model that we train to, the run, hide, fight. It's simple. It's easy. It could be trained to anybody that has the youngest of understanding. So that's where it all kind of it gets put together in that platform. So
do you do anything with the Kern High School District?
Yeah, we do. So they're part of the school. What is it? Safe Schools Coalition of Kern, and it's ran through KCSOS, the Superintendent of Schools. We actually have to give them a lot of credit. They have an excellent program that is free to all the schools. So it's not something that the schools have to pay for or anything like that. Now, obviously, services like ours and training would be something that they would pay for. But KCSOS on their website for every school, and not even just in Kern County, anybody can access it, has a robust program as far as a matrix on how to build your own school safety plans and what goes into that. You know, there's a lot of, I can't remember the different programs that are on there, but there are a lot that the schools that the superintendent of schools has paid for or licensed or anything else to provide for free to our community, and there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Right. I think they've improved a lot. I know I have a daughter, and when first year she was teaching, the training was, well, you have that trash can right there.
Right.
Use that trash can.
Right.
You know, but then now it's a lot. They've done a lot more stuff. So with the locks and so forth. So you have another program that you're partnered with. And I think that's really worth bringing up, being that we're talking a little bit about the schools.
Yeah.
Can you help describe that a little bit and what it does? I know we talked about it offline earlier, and to me, that sounds just like an awesome program, product, however you want to call it, because it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I'll talk about kind of how we got in contact, and if you want to describe the details of it. Sound good? So it's interesting. A few years back, I was asked by another officer to go attend a demonstration up in Tehachapi for this app. It's called the LifeSpot application, and it's a phone or tablet app that is it's designed to facilitate law enforcement response to active shooter incidents. And so I went up there, and these things are kind of a dime a dozen for us to go look at demonstrations of this software, that software. And so I met Brett Titus, the president of the company up there. And as I was sitting there watching it, I'm representing our department and looking at it as somebody who's still active on our SWAT team and all that. And it was the most streamlined app for active shooter response that I think I've seen. It was something that, as I'm sitting there looking at it and thinking of it as an officer responding to an active shooter event, there's quite literally as close of a map that you can get to where the shooter is on a say a school facility or a hospital facility or whatever the facility is, to where the officers can get to where the bad guy is without having to go through this building or that building or any of these other ones that are part of the facility or the campus where the shooter isn't. But we don't know. We don't know where the shooter is. So this app is one that was really pretty cool, and there's a lot of opportunities in there for users of the app to provide medical information and to communicate with law enforcement and the command of the law enforcement. So we can really get into people who are sheltering in place and get them information. We can find out if there's people who are sheltering but are hurt, and we can get medical aid to them even if it's still an ongoing situation. So it's really kind of a cool app. And so we partnered with Brett and his company, and Bobby's been working that pretty good these last couple months. Gone all over the state. And
Yeah. So then that's kind of it's a small world. I am an independent contractor with Brett, and that's kind of the relationship that was odd. Is that in 16, I met Brett Titus and was invited to be a presenter on some officer safety tactics at the Colorado Rocky Mountain Tactical Officer Association in Colorado, and it encompasses SWAT teams from Colorado, New Mexico, some other neighboring states, and also have a bunch of Tier 1 operators from Delta that were presenters at that as well. That's where I met Tom Satterley. I'm kind of proud of that. I didn't know who he was. I knew who he was, but I didn't know really who he was until he was broadcasted on like the Sean Ryan show and every other podcast. The guy's legit, but nice guy. Brett was the president of the association at the time, and I knew he was a subject matter expert. Brett was a 25-year SWAT team member with Denver Police Department. He responded to his team and him, and saw a lot of after-action reports on the Columbine. Aurora. I believe the high school was called Arapahoe, a second one. So they were plagued with these problems. Brett ended up retiring from Denver Police Department, and he had a passion, like there's got to be something that we can do as a community to help and support law enforcement and the actual victim population. And as Ted mentioned, the app basically covers everything from, it's a rapid notify to all first responders on or off duty. It's free to all first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS. It costs them zero money to have this phone application. It also does internal notification. And it essentially works on a geofence around a target. They just map it out, and if there's an activation on the phone, then the police know immediately. It doesn't circumvent 911. It works in conjunction. So you have a unified and unilateral communication plan that works with 911. Who activates it? The user side activates. So the person inside of the geofenced area, whether it's a school site, a church, a business, then they basically just hit a button, they slide it. They don't call it a panic button. They call it a focus button because, again, human nature, you don't want people to panic during these events. Like, let's focus, let's get through the problem. We know we have 5 minutes before the first deputy or officer gets here because that's what we do here in Bakersfield. So let's focus, and then once you get that activation, you populate your phone, and it's almost like a Google map. It is a Google map overlay of the site. So immediately within a 30-meter area, it'll identify where the problem's at. And they can go down to 5 meters, but we know the threat's going to be moving or potentially moving, and we don't want to give the officers responding the false presentation that that's where the problem's at. We want their eyes to be up and looking down range. So once that activation occurs on the focus button, then it populates all of the first responders' phones, and they look at their phone. They're seeing the same thing as the victim. So you're getting live human intel of where the event is kicking off at, the admin building, the gym, the cafeteria, and immediately they can come up and formulate a plan to, on their own accord, to self-dispatch to those areas. And you're seeing it live, and if more activations are occurring, it's kind of leading breadcrumbs to where the event's going at that point. And it also gives you the opportunity to communicate that internally and directly to watch commander, like or the dispatch, like I'm in room 104, this is where it's occurring, suspect looks like this, via texting kind of a messaging. It's really sanitized on who has access to that, because you don't want if you have an interloper inside the problem, you don't want them to have the direct communication. So that's a little controlled, but also does deconfliction. So if you have most churches now, and we know, and I'm not saying they're sanctioned, but they do have their security teams, and some of them are armed. But you can, as a user, you can identify them on certain icons on what they look like on their phone as well. So it really delineates. So you can actually see it like live Madden time, real time information that's coming in. And Ted mentioned that you can also, as a user side, you can say, hey, I'm injured. I'm seriously injured. I'm bleeding out. And the reason why that's in the app is because in Columbine and other incidents, there'll be survivable gunshot wounds, but people are hiding and they're secreted deeper in the problem than the officers. When they get there, they have a resolution to the problem, the shooter, and then they do a systematic search room to room. And there's a method to that. And we don't know where the victims are at that time, because all we know, what we have known in past practices and after actions, is that when an event like this happens and everybody starts calling 911, the first thing that happens is that the 911 system, the phone system, starts shutting down, because you're overloading the bandwidth, and there's an issue with that. The priority over the bandwidth, and it's based on the phones are law enforcement, so they have a priority on that. Internally, even if your phone's on mute or silent, it has like an Amber Alert. It'll have a obnoxious kind of a ring, so it'll alert notify people that are in the impacted area. And finally, it does reunification. So when it populates, your icon populates within the affected area, that, hey, Miss Smith is in room 104, her icon's going, she's set to green, so we know she's okay. We can call her directly or text her directly. And I make it sound like it's arduous, but it's really, it's nanoseconds to get this stuff up and going. It's all software-based. It's technology that it takes maybe 20 minutes to do the training session on the phone itself, and you can run drill modes as much as you want. So you can actually run drill operations outside of an actual activation to do your tabletop exercises and things like that. And that kind of gets your reps in, so that your staff knows how that's activated. Price point on being a user on that side varies. I know that Brett's mission is to get this in every school and church in the United States, so it is at basically operating cost. So there's not a hard number based on volume.
Sure.
So about $1.50 a user is what you're looking at. So you got a school with 10 people, that's going to be $15 a month. Is what it's going to be.
The software part is free to the schools, but then they still need to pay for this.
Well, no, for first responders, it's free. The software,
first responders.
Yeah,
okay, I'm sorry.
But everybody else, it's a subscription, is what it is.
Okay, sure.
So currently, they're law enforcement entities. That how it was brought to our community. Ted mentioned Tehachapi.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy Walker, who's the principal at Heritage Oak Christian School up in Tehachapi, she's the first one to bring it to Kern County. The reason is that her family's from Uvalde, Texas.
Oh.
So being the principal there, Uvalde occurred, and we don't have to go down how happened. And so she started researching like what apps are out there. And she's the one that discovered LifeSpot and brought it and contacted Brett. And Brett goes, where the heck's Tehachapi? She's like, it's in Kern County. He's like, I don't even know where Kern County is. I'm from Colorado. It's by Bakersfield. And he goes, Bakersfield? Because I know a guy from Bakersfield, Bobby Woolard. And when he got here, he asked Ted, hey, is Bobby still around? And he's like, and that's how that connection kind of happened. But with COVID and other things, that's what delayed it. So Heritage Oak, Tehachapi Police Department, Tehachapi High School, and all the other schools up. Tehachapi's live right now, but it's new technology to our community. We're working on other agencies. I can't be specific because the agencies don't endorse, of course, but almost daily I'm getting phone calls from law enforcement, local law enforcement, churches and schools that are interested in this capabilities, because what we're looking at, instead of that 5-minute response time, but going through the traditional 911 system, you know how that works. You call a call taker, what's your emergency? That sounds bad. Let me send it to the dispatcher, then dispatchers, and that just creates time. This cuts through time. That's why it's a rapid notify system, and it saves lives, because that 5 minutes we're trying to survive, let's make it 2 minutes.
Right.
That's the idea behind it, but it's a good kit.
So who's the catalyst behind it? Say if a school wants to do it, is it through law enforcement? Is that the catalyst? Or is it going to be the school district who can actually do it, and then the law enforcement agency will come on board?
So
Who's first?
Yeah, the law enforcement that has jurisdiction or the neighboring jurisdictions would all get all of the sites. You know what I mean? So say it's North High, my alma mater.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, you noticed the hat.
Oh, I did. So say North High has it, and that's in the county, right? BPD, Bakersfield, would still get that notification.
Sure.
Because we got officers who live up there, that are patrolling up near there, and we want that response to be as quick and as efficient as possible. So the school, though, would go direct through the company, through LifeSpot. I actually have to ask Bobby about some of this. Due to my current employment, I don't do any of it in the
you're
city.
kind of in a tough spot on that one.
Yeah. So I don't do any of it in the city, but Bob does all of it here in Bakersfield. I
do.
And I don't know. You want to talk about the marathon? Like, there's some one-off opportunities too that I think are pretty cool.
Yeah, and still with being new and newer technology, for a lot of people are unaware of it. Just like 553, nobody knows about it. But we ran a beta test here regionally during the Bakersfield Marathon. So all of our law enforcement participants, essentially, you have three categories or profiles. You have the user profile, which is the population, the site that the geofence is around. You have the responder profile, which is fire, EMS, law enforcement.
Sure.
And then you have the commander profile. That's your watch commanders, your tactical commanders, and your dispatchers. So how we did the marathon is we set a geofence up around the marathon route. Working with the organizers of the marathon, every water station who had a assigned event person with the marathon, they were the users. So they can make notification if there was an event that happened within their water station area. And it was like, I don't know, 13, 16 of them. And then the responders at the command post, all the way through the route, the quick reaction forces, the tactical units, they all had the capabilities of seeing where the event occurred, if it actually occurred. And then the commander profile, I was at the command post with the tactical commander, and we were running the commander side with the dispatchers. So it's a threefold kind of an event. And you asked, does a police department needs to be first or the entity? It still works efficiently as a internal notification center system. If you have the geofence around, you make an activation. And the positive side of that, if the warehouse is being attacked and you're in the admin office, you can do the go on lockdown or fortify if in that. So just knowledge that there's an event happening. But 911 is still being called. It's just isn't going to all the independent officers' devices. So it's still, once you hit that focus button, it dials 911 at the same time. So 911 goes, we got an alert from LifeSpot and this user with their phone number attached to it. So
So the police departments have to elect to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Start
thinking,
the
like, say,
service.
take somebody like North High as
Right.
an
Yep.
example. If a benefactor wanted to go in and say, listen, I'm going to give you 40 memberships or whatever, $1.50 a person or whatever it is, so $60 a month, $720 a year.
Yep.
And they just went through and said, I'm going to pay for that for North High.
Right.
And they did that. That would cover North High, but KCSO and BPD would still have to get on board,
Right.
roughly.
Right.
But it's still going to call 911.
Yeah, so how that would look if that scenario did play out, then I think the school resource officers, the Kern High School District Police Department, and the deputies assigned to the Oildale area would have to subscribe to it. That's kind of the direction we would like it to go. We'd like all the agencies within Kern County to be unified on jumping on board. I presented to the Kern Chiefs panel where all the chiefs and sheriff were at. A positive feedback from the product, but now it's more of a going back into an individual because it's essentially an agreement that you have a yearly agreement with the department to say that you'll download the software on your city-owned phones or city-owned platform. So the technology stuff's a little unfamiliar for some agencies. Other agencies are like, well, I'm interested, but not right now. But until I think we get more interest from the user side, the North High schools that says, I want my kids to be safer, and this is good technology at a very minimal fee to help survive in these type of events because we're trying to harden our schools and soft targets as much as possible, and this is part of it. So I can't speak for the Sheriff's Department, but I can say I've received positive feedback from them. It's just somebody that I think the more influence they have would expedite them going, this goes from the bottom of all the stuff that needs to get done to the top of all the stuff that needs to get done.
And a school site the size of, we'll just use North because we're using that one. How many users, how many folks do you need subscribed in that? What's the ideal situation for that? Is it 50?
Ideally,
Is it
I
30?
think all of the faculty, for a school. Now you get into the students, and there's a lot of different things going on there. But as far as the faculty goes on a school site, they're the ideal audience for that user group.
So that's where it gets a little, when you get, say, 200 people on, I don't even know how many people are on that campus, quite honestly.
And that's one of those things. If North High, does everybody, faculty, administrative, logistics, bus drivers, the cafeteria people, and not everybody. It could be, the educators in the classroom. Probably I would prioritize that.
Sure.
The administrators, maybe them too, because they need to know this. But not every person actually has to have it. You could dip your toe in the water, go, let's do half our staff this year, and maybe if we like it, if it works out, then we'll roll it out. Because, again, legislation, Senate Bill like 1093, I can't remember which one it is now because so much, but now that ages K through 12, law enforcement can't do active shooter training in front of kids anymore. Can't use it because it creates trauma. Yeah, this is legislation. You cannot go out to a site and go, hey, we're doing an active shooter drill. Just prepare ourselves to make us stronger. Can't do it.
I think we can do training. We just can't do drills, right?
Well, anything that is any evasive or traumatizing to the kids. Officers running around with even like simunitions or like you would actually train like in your hot zone, your warm zone, cold zones. You can't do that because you're with kids on campus. So that's another game changer. Yeah, and then another legislation again with the mobile app for some. It's already legislation that they strongly encourage you having a mobile app or a phone app based to respond to active shooter or active threat events on your school campus. However, they don't want to put the word you must or shall because it costs money, and they don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, that way they're required to pay for it. They're going to require it. I was on a school board for a while, and that's always a handful.
Yeah, but I attest to you, even with that language, like you're strongly encouraged, what that did is set everybody up, unfortunately, because now if you go against a civil trial where only 6 people have to say, hey, you were encouraged and you just elected not to, and now our kids are dead.
Sure.
I hate to say it that way, but that's going to be impacting a lot of people, and you don't want to go down that road. But I think the legislators in California threw up the softball and said, you take the first bite, and if you don't, if you're the school that unfortunately becomes, and hopefully it never happens, a victim of this type of thing, and you don't have it, then they're going to use that as ammunition to say, well, it doesn't matter. They recommended it, and you elected not to.
You made a comment earlier about how many school districts are in the Kern County.
Right.
There's over 50 now.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're all every size and shape you could possibly imagine. It's insane. There's over 1,030, I think, in the state of California now.
Wow.
Well, San Antonio, Texas is live with this, and there was an event there. I can't remember when Brett said it was. It was a recent event. But you had a school teacher that was in the parking lot, and she sees an armed suspect walk into the parking lot. What the intent of that person was, the educator didn't know, but she activated the life spotlight. Law enforcement got there before he was able to breach the outer ring or the outer perimeter of the fencing and took him into custody. And they called that a win because that's the deterrence side, or that's seeing something, saying something, and then hitting the life spot. And it wasn't a false activation; it was somebody that got there. And then yesterday you had that event that happened in Washington D.C. Subject loitering out in front of a museum and religious ideology, and then it didn't warrant the threshold for security to make contact, but it was still odd enough that people recognized it. In these type of events, in this type of climate in this world, I think we need that. You got to fast track we don't know if it's a 911 and we got to get there right away because he's not doing anything, just suspicious. Well, suspicious means 4 hours in our department.
Right.
We're not getting there anything quick for suspicious.
Not the step one you talked about.
Yeah,
exactly.
but if it's now you have the component of, hey, we're at the Shabbat here in our beautiful city, and there's a stranger that doesn't. We're not profiling. We're saying this guy's acting odd or this person's acting odd. And if there's an activation, then we're all coming. And it may warrant that kind of response. You don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to see some districts like Standard. That's standalone area there. That would be a good one.
I would love
to test those things out.
Yeah.
And they, like I said, they might be the catalyst that gets the other schools going. Kern High, 22 campuses, 23 campuses.
Yeah.
I can attest that every year the school districts, they have a safety plan they have to adhere to.
Right.
And the first thing they do is they call the sheriff, they call the chiefs of police, and they say, we want officers. We want an officer at every campus. This has been asked before. And the response is that we don't have officers or deputies to put on every campus. Sorry. We may have one officer assigned to, 20 campuses. And that's realistic. Bakersfield City School District, there's just not enough cops. If the chief could go, yep, we're going to do it, that's our priority, but realistically that can't happen. So it's the world we live in, and the budgets, and there's the money attached to it, and there's personnel issues and everything else. But those kind of things that we can overcome with this. We may not be able to put a cop on your campus, but we can get them there quicker if there's an event. So
Well, we need to make sure we put the link to that in our show notes also for Live Spot. That would be, well, I believe in it. When the first time you told me about it, I was like, we need that.
Yeah, it's really cool piece of technology.
Yeah, and I'll finish up the story with Brett and the meeting and all that stuff. We reconnected, and here's where we're at. And then is when I retired, he actually called me and he goes, "Hey, Bobby, what are you up to?" I go, "Well, I just retired." He goes, "Well, no, you didn't." And I'm like, "What?" And he ran it down to me on what it does, and that's kind of when I say purpose, I don't use that lightly. I said, I think every school, every church, and if I can get every school and church on board and every law enforcement, fire, EMS on board, and then I'm done. Then I can go, yep, my public service is done.
What about large businesses?
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Would you recommend? Okay, because I know we
there
talked.
are local businesses that use it now.
Yeah.
Is there? Okay, 'cause
Yeah, we're live here with, not go down that, but yeah, any business. Again, human factors. You go anywhere, wherever there's people, you got human problems, and that's kind of where we like to direct it. But warehouses, Amazons, oil field, agriculture, any one of those places are going to be susceptible of having some kind of issues going on. So especially with not internally, but externally being brought internally, that's always going to be an all.
I think I work for a very large company, and I think about when I've been back to their offices back east, and I look at that, and there's a lot of people in that office. And I think, Mike, like you said, you're bringing that stuff in. No, I don't care who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's tying it back to the workplace violence. So anything, like Bob said, that we can do left of bang to help prepare for, prevent, mitigate, and facilitate response is definitely a win.
100%.
Left of bang, I like that.
Yeah.
With your experiences, what you've seen in the past, where you could have stepped, some people have had to step in and they've used this, or what is the best case scenario, or where you've seen it work and where you've seen it went bad?
Yeah, I can, and I'll sanitize this. I don't because there's current litigation and criminal and civil going on with this case, and it's local, regional. It was a business owner that had an activation, an alarm, which it usually is the wind, is it a stray cat, motion sensor, glass break. But the business owner decided to respond to this to his activation. And what does he find? Oh, and also there were some prior thefts to his yard, some like scrap metal and whatever's getting stolen. So he rolls over to this on his own. He's a CCW permit holder. He gets there and he encounters a subject that's burglarizing, his place, or that's not supposed to be on his business. The business owner felt there was a fear for his life. I don't know the details on it, but felt there was a fear for his life, and then he fired a round. The suspect ended up surrendering, and the business owner holds him at bay. And my understanding that the business owner didn't call 911. He called a family member, a relative, a sibling, not sibling, a son, and said, "Hey, why don't you come on over here?" And son ends up showing up. And it was a period of time where the suspect, well, I call him a suspect, which later turned into a victim, sustained some physical force against them from whoever was at the business at the time, the owner and the son. And later the law enforcement was called. The law enforcement shows up with their body-worn cameras, And at first, they understand that there's probably a suspect burglar. A shot was fired, so they get there, and of course, heightened alert, big response.
Sure.
Once they get there, they separate everybody. Bad guy's in the car. Bad guy tells his version, which we're probably thinking, he's full of crap. Suspects tell their stuff, or the business owner and son tell their version of it, and then things aren't looking good. And then now it's like, okay, now we have a situation where, in all rights, I mean, it probably would have been a fairly, what I would consider a clean use of deadly force, even though the guy wasn't shot. But now you have these other components to it. As a result of that, the dad, business owner, and son were arrested, and now this suspect that was probably high on fentanyl and everything else is looking at a pretty handsome reward in some kind of civil trial, because now your business is going to be gone. This guy has a very strong case of leg sweeping you and everything you worked for in the past 30 years. Not only you, but you also, your son and your inheritance, not inheritance, but your legacy and everything's going to be thrown out the window. So, again, I think you have to, if you're going to have the responsibility of using a firearm, then the first thing you need to do is never use it appropriately. And then once the smoke clears, so to speak, you have to have the foresight, and your body won't go where your mind's never been. So if you haven't thought these type of scenarios through, where you're just at a range putting 12 rounds on a target, you get this permit, and now you got a gun, and you show all your friends when you're leaning over at the barbecue, and they say, "Whoa, you got a gun on you." Yeah, I can. It's a little more significant than that. You carry a responsibility, because if you in those moments, if you have to utilize your firearm, there's that other side that Ted and I were talking about. You're going to have criminal investigators that are going to show up, and they're going to want to know answers, and you have to justify it, even if you shot them or not. And then you add those other layers of components of false imprisonment, torture, those kind of things. Then those aren't like, I'll spend 6 months in county jail and be out. I mean, that's significant terms. Right. So even if you get out of it through some type of a serpent tongue criminal defense attorney can get you out of the you're not going to jail side, and you plea bargain out with like you picking up trash on a highway for a year, no problem. Well, then the next layer, you're going to get a Garagos out of L.A. that's going to come down there and go, "Hey, you business owner, you're worth some money. Oh, you got insurance?" And then that's where the problems are going to come. And that's 10, 15 years of stress and life-changing events that you're never going to recover from. So I would say if you're training, don't just – it's 16 hours of baby shit compared to 15 years of stressing on inappropriately using a firearm. If you're not going to use it right, then just get bear mace and keep it in your purse or whatever. But that's part of the calculus of being one of the 12,000 permit holders here in Kern County. I know we don't joke about it, but we know it's easier to get a permit out of the county than it is out of any other municipalities. Right. But I'm an advocate for it. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. But if you're going to bear that responsibility, it has a lot of unintended consequences if it's not used right. So I'll kind of close with that.
Yeah, I think that a slightly different angle of similar issue. What I've seen that people who are legally in possession of a firearm and what they use for home defense and what they use to defend themselves in a lethal force encounter. One, the training. A lot of times people don't realize that it is a lot different. One, if it's a two-way range and somebody's shooting at you, that is a whole lot different than going out and shooting a target, right? Two, just unfamiliarity with your weapon and whether you keep it armed or you keep it accessible or where you keep it. If you can't get to it, is it really that much of an asset, or is it more of a liability? If you haven't made that decision ahead of time that you're willing to actually shoot somebody and what that entails, we've seen people that hesitate and actually have the firearm taken from them. Yeah. And so then we've seen people that have used it, and then they're surprised by the fact that they are brought down to the police station and that they're interviewed, and it is completely up to them if they speak or they don't speak or whatever. But those officers are trying to find facts, and they're trying to determine, was it reasonable, was the perception of the threat reasonable, and was the response reasonable? They have to ask all sorts of questions to figure that out, and a lot of it is mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's physical stuff and crime scene stuff that or scene stuff that goes into that. But it could be that you get booked that night. You know what I mean? Sure. And it's not anything. It doesn't mean that the person did something illegal. It's that we've got probable cause, and we don't have enough mitigating reasons to say that, hey, what you did was not a murder, or it was a murder. You know what I mean? So it's there's absolutely no interest in arresting people that haven't done anything, but we have to have the facts to prove that it was a legal act, or at least it was not an illegal act. So a lot of times people are surprised by that. It is not like TV, where shooting somebody and they go flying back and they have no more say in the fight, right? It's very rare that somebody is shot and immediately goes lights out, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
It can happen, but people that have been shot are still dangerous, right? Or can be. Just like we tell cops, if you've been shot, you're not dead. You can still fight through that, or get yourself some first aid or self treatment, that sort of thing. I think that if I understood the question correctly, those are some of the things that I wish people knew ahead of time, and it's some of the stuff that we like to cover based on our experience. But I think that adds to the shock and the trauma that people experience when they don't know how that situation is going to unfold when they have to explain themselves.
Oh, I think that lays it out pretty well. You got to, we're all going to think about it.
Right.
What do we got to do? But you never know.
Right.
You guys have had to been through it, so none of us really have.
There are a lot of times where people initially will make a very reasonable decision, but then their emotions take over. And what that, I can think of an instance specifically where somebody breaks into somebody else's house. That person in the house is a legal gun owner. They defend themselves and their perception of the threat by shooting at the person, but then they chase them outside and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot as that person's running away. And, like I said, I'm not talking about wrong or right. I'm talking about legal and illegal.
Yeah, the threat was over at that point in their mind.
So, and sometimes that's difficult for people to kind of envision.
Sure. Well, your emotions are taken over then,
right.
And you can't be emotional, I would think, in that one.
Yeah, that's that human factors that Ted and we preach to our students, especially. You got to understand when they get there, it's being recorded, and that's the big thing. I know I say it over and over again, but that human nature is like, we get it. It's not intended to be derogatory or anything. It's a human reaction. You're stressing out. You maybe have just killed somebody. That is not normal. And if you haven't really thought through that, sometimes if you tell the officers, like, I'm willing to cooperate with you after I talk to my attorney, here's my gun, and just
right.
And what do they say? Shut the beast kind of things. And I hate to use that language, but we're not going to be offended. It's like, it is your constitutional right. Why wouldn't you? And that's part of the realism that we didn't go to a 10-hour course, became CCW instructors. This is live stuff, and this is long-term. And, again, I mean, Ted's right. The criminal side, but then the civil side. Beyond a reasonable doubt criminal, that's a lot. That's a high threshold.
Sure. The
more likely than not, of that 60% of that jury goes, nah, you're probably screwed up on this one. And that's where...
You got to remember, O.J. got off, he was acquitted.
Yeah.
But then what happened civilly, right?
Yeah.
So, everyone knew he was guilty.
Yeah.
But
right.
Yeah, much lower bar.
Exactly. Yeah. We use the term wait. Why am I talking?
Correct.
And that's, I did have a coworker. That was our training and our sales training. It was, why am I talking as sales? You shut the hell up. With hers, it was, they would have us write that on our notebook. Wait. Hers was STFU. She wrote that at the top of her notepad. So it was that simple.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I saw it on her notebook one day. It's Kristen. I get it.
It was so bad after Miranda. We even tell you, hey, you have the right to remain silent. You still want to talk? Sure. And it's not. It's a human thing. We don't know how to. Our mind's not going like, hey, I think I just took somebody's life, and now you just want to. I mean, you feel bad, you feel sad, you want to get it out. It's your own fight. You figure it out. But my recommendation: it's your rights. You have a constitution. You're not being waterboarded or nothing, and you have an attorney, or at least you have a little time to reflect on it. You'll give a response. But as the officer side, we have a dead body. We have to talk about this. It's not like if we show up and we see dead body, we see you there with the smoking gun, and you say, I want to talk to my attorney. Well, you're going in handcuffs, and we're going to charge, because that's probable cause enough to say we cannot justify this homicide.
That is
right
not
now.
a personal decision.
No, that's just
that's a procedural decision.
Are there certain questions you have to answer?
Correct.
Is what like how many shots you fired?
As a normal citizen, no.
Oh no, okay.
For officers, yes.
Okay.
So they are administratively compelled for a public safety statement. So
okay.
Did they shoot somebody? Did they fire their gun? How many rounds? The direction of stuff that would impact public safety to where right now we need to go account for the rounds that have been fired.
Right.
So so we do administratively compel
But
them
that's
to do
that's
that.
the officers. Now it's not. See, I was instructed when I went through my first course was we had to answer those questions too.
No, I mean it is probably best interest, for the safety of things, but the cost of when we administratively compel an officer, the cost of them not doing it is that they get terminated.
Right.
Well,
that makes sense.
So yeah, or they could be. It's not that they would be, but but a general public, we're not your employer.
Yeah. Well, and you'd want to know. I mean, and you may not know. I mean, as a civilian, if I shot 5 rounds or 7 rounds,
Right.
I may
Yeah,
not
because it's
know
traumatic.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Or are there suspects still outstanding? Did one get away? One got shot? We don't know. And it's that fine line, and it's not like, okay, off the record, this is what happened. Because the camera's going.
Yes.
And it's nothing's off the record. That's the point. And again, we're putting a lot of sauce on it, but there's a reason why we want to be able, at least on the instructor side, to say just reinforce that this is your right, but it's your own person. If you feel like it's a clean shooting, you have nothing to worry about. It's on your own accord. But my best advice is wait for an attorney.
And most officers now are supportive of body cams, aren't they? I mean, that's
I think that there's still probably some that don't really care for it, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that it has helped more officers than it's hurt.
Yeah,
and the ones that it's hurt, honestly, we don't really want them doing the job anyway.
no, you can't save the bad ones.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, when I was assigned as an internal affairs lieutenant, the term demonstrably false means that somebody's coming and making a false accusation against an officer, and it's hard to prove or disprove those events. It's like a he said, she said, she said, she said, whatever. And to go down to demonstrably false, it was never really a slam dunk. Body-worn camera, you tell me where this happened. Well, you manipulated the film. No, we didn't.
It's all right
Now
there.
you're saying the officer took your wallet or cussed at you. Ma'am, I'm watching it. You're watching it with me. Where did this happen? Well, I didn't. Well, that's demonstrably false. We don't charge the complainant, but at least we can exonerate the officer and say this is a demonstrably false accusation. And what it does, it protects them. It really does. The camera does. And the department and everybody else, but mostly the officer.
Yeah. No, I my old neighbor, L.A. County Sheriff, when I was in Ranch Cucamonga, and that would have been back in 97, 96, 97. He actually kept a recorder. It wasn't a video back then.
Right.
And it saved his job.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it was, and I think his training officer told him to do it. He said, you should do this. And sure enough, it saved his ass.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have been fired.
Well, it used to be the officer in court, raise your hand, tell the truth. Yep. Is this what happened? Yes, Your Honor. Okay, next. And now it's like the jury wants to see forensic evidence because of all the
See,
the
that's
television
the
shows and
television
everything
shows.
that's
the
out
worst
there.
thing that happened to law
Yeah.
enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine to see it.
But now at the next level, they want to watch the video. They want to see what happened, and they
Sure.
want to. That's really what is a determining factor in a lot of these cases. So I mean, that's it's a. In my opinion, being an officer without BWC, moving into now I was an administrator when we deployed them. I wore it a couple times as an administrator when I was in uniform, but I didn't have to wear it daily. So, and I think Ted, you caught it on the maybe as a sergeant level.
Yeah, I was a lieutenant when they rolled
yeah.
out, so it didn't affect me as much as
Right.
the officers who
Yeah.
did. And I will say though that it adds another level of stress.
I'm sure.
Not because they're doing the wrong thing, but if you can imagine somebody that's just sitting there watching everything you do, everything you say, you're going into the store, you're talking with your friends, and now you've got that recorded at all times.
Right.
It's stressful.
That's what transparency looks like.
It is. So to get a hold of you guys, alphasolutions.com.
AlphaSafetySolutions.com.
AlphaSafetySolutions.com.
Yeah, and our email is info@alphasafetysolutions.com.
LifeSpot, same thing. You can contact us on alphasafetysolutions.com or info@alphasafetysolutions. You can also reach out to the Titus side of the house, and it's lifespot.app.com. And you just link up with the LifeSpot crew. They'd be happy to do a real quick 20-minute presentation on the on the 7 key functions and what it would take to bring this life-saving software to your workplace, your school site, and your religious worship site as well. You can contact phone number. That cool to give her that?
Yep.
Yeah, you can contact me directly. I'm retired. Day or night, if you get bored, you want some cop stories or something. If you're running with some insomnia, you need to go to bed, call me. I'll put you to sleep. My phone number is area code 661 617-9442. Please shoot me a text or call, and then I'll link up with you and then give you the complete rundown or some more information on it.
You're going to get all the phone calls now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what? It's make me feel. Yeah, make me feel sorry that I put my number out.
You want to put your address up there? Or maybe your kids.
No, you're famous.
Grab a beer.
Now.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, as soon as you told me about it at that show, I was. I love this thing.
Yeah, like I said, I can't work with it here, but having seen it and seen what it can do, it really is cool, and it could really save lives.
But if the BPD decided to do it, you could be helpful to it. You would have somebody else come in and do it.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with BPD doing it or with us doing it here in town.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. How long till you retire? You're almost 20 in.
Yeah,
gotta be
I'm past 20 in, but I'll probably go another 4 years.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we'll sell a lot more of this life spot than you can retire in too.
Yeah, definitely. Churches, schools. God, I mean, we don't want another Uvalde and another event like that.
Right.
No, very good. Well, I appreciate you guys coming. This was awesome.
Thank you for inviting us.
You know, like I said, I know we get off on different tangents and different questions, but makes it interesting sometimes. So, thank you, guys.